Hi, I'm Andrew Hammer, Executive Director at the Foundation for the Study of Political Psychopathology, and I'm sitting down today with our director, Dr. Richard Konigsberg, to discuss his scholarly work on war, Hitler, the Holocaust, and what he calls the psychopathology of normalcy. Richard has adapted to the current trend of presenting his ideas through short videos. We have a series of briefs, and today we will be discussing Richard's commentary on the work of Arthur Feiner. Dead Soldiers as Gifts to the God. Arthur H. Feiner and Edgar Levenson discuss the compassionate sacrifice as a gift, an act of renouncement, requiring that the worshiper give some of his substance or goods to the gods. The worshiper does this because he believes his own survival requires the god's survival. If the worshiper is to live, the gods must not die. In our time, the god worshipped is the nation state, and the worshiper's gift is his own body and blood in warfare. We call this sacrifice. By virtue of giving this gift to the god, the survival of the worshiper is assured. For the worshiper to live, the god must not die. Why has this god, society, assumed so much power over our minds, bodies, and hearts of human beings? Why do we forfeit our lives in the name of nations and their leaders? A history of the 20th century might be written as an answer to this question.
Yeah, so this one's somewhat complex. What are your thoughts on this one? What does this mean?
I guess I don't understand your last sentence. A history of the 20th century might be written as an answer to this question.
The question of why society has assumed such power over the bodies of human beings. So all of the killing, or the major killing, not, somebody killed in New York City on the street, but the killings of Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Hitler, and Pol Pot are all done in the names of their nations. These guys could not just kill people, and they're not called murderers because if they did that, they'd be put in jail. But it's because they became leaders of their country and therefore the representative of the nation, that they were able to perform these dastardly acts with the approval of their society, basically. I mean, it's not like there may have been pockets of people that didn't participate in politics, but for the most part, the entire societies accepted the idea that these men were able and not morally incorrect to kill people. So in the case of Stalin, he was, his basic lifestyle was to be bought lists of people. Somehow he knew a lot of people that were in the Communist Party, and somehow he felt they were disloyal. And he would just cross off the names, and the next day they'd be shot, or they would be sent to, what was that place?
The Gulag Archipelago.
Right.
I don't know what the actual, there's an actual name for it, but that's okay.
That's what Solzhenitsyn wrote about,
yeah,
which was so shocking to Western people. And yet, of course, Hitler is the most well-known person of the 20th century, and he is known for killing so many people. I mean, some of my papers are titled "Nations Kill a Lot of People." And yet we take this for granted, that somehow this is something that nations are permitted to do, and we don't, and the people in those nations don't condemn these people. In fact, they glorify them, whereas individual killers are put in jail. Even the most vicious killer, what was that guy that killed 17 people and put them in the refrigerator?
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, so Jeffrey Dahmer was a wimp compared with these guys. And that's what's so strange, that at the heart of civilization are these people that are given the right to kill not only the enemy, but their own citizens by putting them into wars.
And this is what you mean in your book. Nations have the right to kill.
Nations have the right to kill. Yeah, nations, and few people are as dumb as the person that you told me about that think this was my opinion. It's a statement of civilization that people assume that nations have the right to kill. And in fact, my whole work is to try to contradict this idea that nations don't have the right to kill. And the reason this is such a difficult job is because there is the assumption that this is one of the prerogatives of nations is to kill, is to let die, as some people put it, their own soldiers, and then they go to Arlington National Cemetery and they weep for the soldiers, and it's all part of a compact ritual which includes letting the soldiers die in war and then building the memorials and feeling sorry for them, but still continuing to send them to war until, very recently, they don't send them to war as much, at least Americans, even in a just cause like Ukraine.
Yeah. So it's not unlike the Aztecs in a certain way that it's this mechanism of mass sacrifice so that, the Aztecs sacrificed people so that the sun would come up every day. In a certain sense, these wars in some way keep the nation around every day.
Like the sun. But the Aztecs, this is what's so strange. The Aztecs were very conscious of the fact that they were waging wars to get the sun to rise. And they had what they called, what was that kind of war? That phony wars.
Yeah.
If there weren't any real wars, there were 13 or more nation states in the Aztec Empire. And if there wasn't any wars, they would have these phony wars where people were killed so they could, for the express purpose of getting more sacrifice victims, because they were worried that the sun wouldn't rise and then the whole civilization, if the sun doesn't rise, then they can't plant their crops. And I always make the joke, why didn't they do an experiment one day and see if the world kept on going, if they didn't kill anybody? But they never did that. They didn't want to risk it.
Okay.
So my broader question is, how is it that society assumes such power over individuals? In our culture, presumably, the individual is the basic unit of, the most important unit, the individual. And I've read this many times, that United States was the first country in history to place the individual. That all men are created equal, that they have rights. So this came as a shock to me. I couldn't believe that Americans were the first ones to give the right of the individual over the rights of the society. And of course, that came from Thomas Paine's bestseller, which you're familiar with, Common Sense, where he argued that. And the founding fathers, apparently, as rich as they were and as prominent as they were, they embraced this idea of the individual. And George Washington, when they wanted to make him a king after he had 2 terms, he didn't even like being president. He said, no way, I'm staying here in Mount Vernon, get another president. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm happy on my farm.
Okay. So
he did have slaves, but that's another story.
Okay. So tying this back to a previous brief that we did, the proof of the pudding is in the dying, that kind of works in concert with the sacrifice where people see the people are willing to die for the nation or the society. And that's kind of how it rises or gets this power inside of our heads.
Yeah, the sacrifices, yeah, everybody says, if you say it as a kind of cliche, dying for the country,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. And it's been going on for longer than people think. People think it's, a new thing with Napoleon, but actually there's this book by Kantorowicz that traces this back much, much earlier to the idea that he calls it the king's two bodies. The king has two bodies. One is his actual corporeal body, and the other is his magical body, which lives forever. So that's where the phrase, the king is dead, long live the king. In other words, one king dies, but the king as an abstract entity doesn't die because another king takes the place. So the material king is not as important as the abstract king, and that's to whom the people in the society submit. And the nation state kind of took the place of kings with Napoleon, and then you die for the nation or for the leader. And Napoleon, to my astonishment, he's still written up as some kind of a hero, even though when he went into Russia to try to conquer Russia, he lost almost all his soldiers. So what is this? I mean, this is where my conscience or my morality comes in. What is this where the historians write about these people as if they're great men when all they have to show for it is a bunch of dead people?
Yeah.
And France became more glorified. And the French Revolution, by the way, came after the American Revolution. And we know what happened there. They started guillotining their own people.
Yeah. Yeah. So they were just sacrificing people so that France could be great.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so
yeah,
that's about it for this one.
Yep. Thanks a lot
I'm
for
sure
the
there'll be
discussion
more.
today. Yep. Thank you for the discussion. And everyone have a nice day, and we will see you shortly.
Okay.
Okay.